But what do we think of these new ships, Leif?
So just to break it down in case you've not seen them, 8 new ships at least are on the way, and these are all Navy ships. The first one is the class is all the exploration T1 frigates are getting Navy variants, so the Navy Heron, the Navy Probe, and the Amara and Glente versions as well. And these ships, they lose the salvaging bonus, but they get a bit of a DPS increase. The idea these are now combat probers, so they get a massively reduced CPU draw to expanded probe launchers. This fleet, the ship can actually mount expanded probe launchers and it not compromise the fit. They have the same virus kind of relic and hacking module changes. So these things are good for hacking into exploration sites, or if you want to hack into a structure to determine its vulnerability. But they got a bit of weapons damage as well. So, for example, like I said, the probe with light missiles can still kick out well over 100 DPS with light missiles, and will kick out something in the short. Will kick out probably a lot more in the short range. So this clearly is there to try and, if you like, take the bit of the market away from the Astero, which has had a bit of a monopoly in terms of the frigate class exploration ship on this. Are these as good as the Astero in a straight up thing? Because the Astero has a tank bonus and drones? Possibly not, but this does give a nice couple of other options out there, to both to fleets, because these things can both combat probe and also be a little bit active by themselves, but also just for kind of entry level kind of hacking relic sites and actually able to fight off minor threats by themselves.
Yeah, and that's most of the player feedback I've seen has been people praising that there's going to be an alternative to the Astero, something to threaten the Astero. I guess has been an apex predator in the frigate exploration side of the game for, I guess, since it really came out. There's no compelling alternative to that unless you go upgrade to, say, a Tech 3 destroyer.
Yeah, I mean, these things don't get the cloak, but then, the Navy frigates by themselves are usually very fast and nimble, and are able to get a kind of away from most things. So while they can't cloak, they can often kind of just kite away and run away from things very quickly as well. The second set of ships are the Navy battlecruisers. So most people will know that we have, the battlecruisers kind of came out in 2 tranches. There was the first generation and the second generation, and we've had the Hurricane, we've got the Hurricane's fleet issue, Brudix fleet issue, Harbinger, and Drake. But now we're getting the Ferox, we're getting the Cyclone, we're getting the Myrmidon, and we're also getting the Prophecy as Navy variants. And these bring a couple of bonuses that maybe not have seen before. I think we'll start with the Myrmidon, since this is the one that's probably polarized the community the most, I think, to start off with.
I don't know if polarized is the right word. I would say cautious optimism, perhaps, or cautious skepticism, depending on what side of the ball you fall under. But in general, I think people like it. The big draw for the new Myrmidon Navy issue is that it's going to get a bonus to stasis webification drones, which is a fascinating bonus. We haven't really seen that outside of Mimitar carriers. So this will be an interesting potential role for it in terms of fleet fights especially. In terms of soloing and small gang, it's hard to say. It's nice having those long-range webs. There is concern that the drones will be shot down immediately because they'll be quite thin hit point-wise, and I think there's some general concern over the utility of web drones as a thing because of how they stack on each other. But it's something interesting, and if your fleet either can't afford a Loki or maybe there's some other reason why you wouldn't want to bring a Loki to the party, this Myrmidon could be a good long-range webification option.
You're right, you've pointed out a couple of things there. I mean, the Nidogger gets a range bonus to its fighters, which can only use webs for a short amount of time before they go into cooldown, whereas the Berserker SW900s, they can just go out there and web, and they can move okay fast, maybe up to 2k a second. But you've also hit on one of the biggest weaknesses there, is the hit points of these things. These things are really easy to defang and shoot down. Like a Scepter shouldn't have too much problem. A combat Scepter shouldn't have much of an issue of deleting these by itself. And I guess I'd like to have seen maybe either a hit point boost to these, or maybe just kind of give the Myrmidon a bit more of a utility role and give it bonuses to more than just stasis web drones, like give it like the nuke drones or the track weapon disrupting drones. These drones don't really see use outside of anywhere right now, and it would be nice to kind of bring them in.
Yeah, and I mean, this might kind of go without saying, but I still feel like some people will need to hear it. The whole point of the web drone is webbing something down. It's not going to do that if it can't actually catch the thing. So your web drones have some limited viability there because you can send them out, but they're not going to do anything if they don't catch the target. And the whole reason why you're probably webbing it is because it's going faster than you.
Yeah.
So, your heavy web drones without significant bonuses to velocity and, dedicating your mid slots to it, probably not going to catch, say, a micro warp driving vagabond. That could be a real problem.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. In terms of the price of the Navy battlecruisers, if we go on what the current ones are, you're talking 200-300 mil. It's not that more and more expensive to get a Loki, and then you've got a ship that can instantly apply its webs to a target if it's in range, whereas this one has to wait for its drones to slow over there. I mean, once it has you and it gets on top of you, it can drop over 500 DPS of blasters on you, and it can pull its web drones in once it has its own web on and pull out a set of ogres on you. So there's that kind of side of things, but I wonder that there's not the niche examples enough that would make those drones necessarily better than, as you say, like a Loki, or if one of your fleet mates brings a hyena and just completely eliminates the need for this that bonus in the first place.
Well, it'll be better than any single web, right? Because the bonus that it gets, assuming you have all your skills to 5, it's a 50% bonus to the factor of velocity decrease. So
an SW 900 is 20 base, so it increases each drone to a 30% web. So that's each drone. The Yamurn can do 4 of them, subject to stacking penalties. So I think it works out about 60. I think probably about 65, 70% with all 4 of them on,
which is pretty good. I think the downside, now they sort of thought about one of the drawbacks because it does have a roll bonus to drone speed, but it's kind of a small bonus, 12.5%. It needs to be bigger for it to really have that competitive impact. I mean, maybe players will find an interesting use for it. I just think it's a great concept for a ship. I don't know if it really makes itself stand out compared to some of its alternatives, but I think the one drawback or the one advantage it will have over, say, the Loki is it's going to be a lot cheaper.
Moving on then to the Cyclone fleet issue. So this one's an interesting one because it gets a 9% rate of fire bonus as opposed to the base Cyclones. I think it's 5 or 7.5%. So this thing can spit out missiles at an ungodly rate. I mean, we did the numbers. You can, with a ham fit, you can overheat to under 2 seconds rate of fire per volley. Heavy missiles you can get under 4 seconds quite easily. It seems to be a bit of a kind of in the same ballpark as the Drake Navy issue. I mean, it has a similar kind of range to it. It's not damage locked. It can easily spit 500 DPS faction. Might not necessarily have as thick a tank as the Drake Navy issue, though.
Well, it also apparently has quite a high base speed, which is interesting. I think the most bizarre thing about this is why 9%? Why not 10? It's the only odd number bonus, I think, in the entire game. Just go whole hog, man.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, it has 6 heavies. It has 6 missile slots as opposed to the DNI 7. So the DNI does a bit more damage than that. But with the 2 utility highs, you can get quite easily a double links fit, which is quite good for the solo side of things because you can double up on a skirmish or bring a skirmish and a shield and bring quite a lot of utility to any gang that employs this.
Now, Stitch Kalen raised an interesting concept for the Cyclone fleet issue as opposed to the regular Cyclone fleet issue, which has a tank bonus. So you can go in there and brawl a bit. Cyclone fleet issue with the speed, with the insanely high damage bonus and the application bonus, the concept might be kind of dive in, kill something quickly, then try to burn out, which I think for a battle cruiser is a very bold battle plan, but again, these are interesting concept ships.
Mm. Then we've got the Prophecy Navy issue, which ensures the kind of resistance bonuses for a HP bonus. So it gets the same bonus as the Agara Navy issue and the Damnation. So this thing can pack a lot of hit points very quickly. And it has a bit of a hybrid bonus, not for hybrid weapons, but it has both laser damage, and it also gets a slight drone bonus, but again, 5% as opposed to the typical 10% that you often see on drone ships.
I think this is a fantastic, of all of them, I think this is one that jumps out most immediately as really, really cool and very interesting to go fly. It gets the microwarp velocity bonus of the Merm Navy. It gets a bonus to optimal range and fall off for its roll, and then an additional 50% to the medium energy turrets. So it's going to strike out very far. It's going to have drones for up close and personal stuff. It's going to have a very thick tank. I think depending on where this thing falls down price-wise and sig radius and speed-wise once they're done tweaking it, this could be a very, very interesting ship. I feel like it does everything the AUG Navy does, but a little bit better. If it can sig tank almost as well, I think you have a very clear front runner for a cheap, hard-hitting, like small to medium fleet fighting ship.
Yeah, I mean, I did some numbers on this and indeed on Singularity to show it. You can stick pulsers on it, you can stick a plate on it, and with Scorch, you can hit out to nearly 50 kilometers with about 500 plus of you've got about 500 DPS here, 200 and 300 of DPS of the lasers, and then your hammerheads add another 200 DPS, but that's not that insignificant considering you had hammerheads. They get a speed bonus on the hull, so they can do nearly 3k a second. So it strikes me this thing is going to be really good at just wiping support and doesn't necessarily need to be straight on top of the target in order to do so. And it's got 123k effective hit points on this particular fit without very much bling and very much trying. This thing's HP will scale very quickly with links and even a little bit of bling or implant.
Yeah, it's going to be bargain basement cheap. You're going to get a lot of value out of it. I mean, I guess it'll come down to what the hull costs, but if it's anything like the other Navy battle cruisers, somewhere in the 150 to 200 million ISK range, it's really good. If Tech 2 prices stay low, I think it'll have a lot of competition from hacks, but it's still quite good.
The final ship is the Ferex Navy. So instead of the Ferex being the range sniping platform that it pretty much is, it swaps that bonus for a tracking. So it looks on paper much more like a Brudix Navy issue. So it gets damage, it gets tracking. You have the roll bonus of optimal range and fall off, which is the same as all the other battle cruisers. And it gets a reduction in cap use to the shield booster. So this kind of favors actual shield boosters rather than ancillary boosters. So whether they seem to have this as a ship that is designed to kind of have a perhaps a lower peak tank, like you get really high kind of burst kind of reps from an ancillary, then you get the long cooldown from the reload. This thing's generally designed to be more of a kind of like take damage over time and just chew through things. I mean, it will absolutely chew through things. The tracking bonus is not insignificant. I mean, even with Null, you've got 89 tracking, which is going to track frigates very easily unless they're riding close of you with nothing to apply onto them. I'm not quite sure about the bonus though. It just doesn't seem to quite fit in unless you kind of single or double cap inject. Alec, what do you think of this?
I think it gives Caldari the thing that Caldari pilots have always wanted, which is a solo blaster boat option, which is really what it ultimately comes down to. This is like a shield tanked Brudix.
Yeah.
In fact, I think that's literally what it is.
I think so. It is literally the shield BNI.
Which, okay. I mean, yeah, people have been trying to blaster Ferox or blaster Moa for ages now, so now they can go do that.
Yeah, I mean, the fit that I'm looking at has an acre full of CPU, so I wonder if they've designed this to kind of go towards some of the bigger kind of, maybe like the extra large boosters, but again, it would destabilize the tank otherwise. But I'll be interested to see how this is, and again, it all depends on the pricing. It does lose the HP, sorry, the resistance bonuses that the Ferex and the Drake get, so it is not going to be as kind of like as high on the resistances, but of course it gets Navy Battlecruiser base effective hit points and shield, so it's rocking at nearly 10k shield just to start off with.
Yeah, and critically, it is only the activation cost, not the shield amount. So I think with the CPU, it seems like it's probably going to be a shield booster plus one of the shield boost amplifiers. Seems like a good pairing there. I don't know where it's going to get the cap from. Putting a cap booster on it is going to be very cramped, I think, but it'll be interesting for sure. I just think it fills a niche that people have been trying to create from Caldari ships for a long time, and now they've actually got something dedicated to the purpose. It might not be the best possible version of it, but it's pretty good.